The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.
A story that is my version of a story that Don Ketting tells, and he's very generous with saying you can pass these stories on. His story title is One Man's Trouble. But I reworked this story and I just call it Trouble. There was once a farmer who was so poor that even though he worked from sunrise to sunset, he couldn't make ends meet. In the spring, he would plant his crops, and one year there would be a flood. The following year there'd be a drought. His animals grew thin for lack of food. His hens stopped laying eggs. His cow stopped producing milk. The man was beside himself. One day he sat down on a stump in the barnyard, put his head in his hands, and as he sat there, he noticed something moving up around the barn. It stood upright like a man, but it seemed to be covered with hair or fur. So as he crept closer, he noticed it had black, beady eyes and yellow teeth. And he called out, "What are you? Who are you?" And the creature replied, "I am Trouble. I am the reason for all your misfortune. I like hanging around your farm, causing trouble, trouble, trouble." The man was so angry, he grabbed Trouble, he tied him up with a rope. Then he dug a deep hole over by the pasture fence, and he set Trouble right down in that deep hole. And so he couldn't escape. He got big boulders and piled them right on top of the opening. And you know, the next day, the man's fortune changed. His crops started growing. His trees were laden with fruit. His animals gave birth to their young. The hens started laying eggs. The cows produced more milk than they ever had before. Merchants came from the town to buy his milk and eggs, and people from all over the countryside heard that his produce was the freshest, the best to be found. And little by little, the man got wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. Now, the farmer had a neighbor who had always been a very wealthy man. In fact, he looked down on that farmer thinking his misfortune is due to either laziness or lack of ability on how to run a farm. But when he saw the farmer prospering, he wasn't very pleased. He liked being the wealthiest man in the countryside. So he went down to pay a visit with the farmer. And as they talked, the farmer told him all about Trouble and how he had buried him down in that hole. That night, under the cover of darkness, the neighbor crept into the farmer's yard. He carefully removed those boulders and pulled Trouble right out of that hole, cutting the ropes. Trouble said, "Oh, thank you for rescuing me." And the wealthy neighbor said, "Now you are free to roam around this farm once more." But Trouble said, "Oh no, I don't want to stay around this farm. The farmer was mean to me. He He put me down in a hole. But you, oh, you have been so kind. You freed me. I'd like to hang around you. And so it was. Trouble went home with that wealthy man. Now, that doesn't have to be the end of the story. So I'm giving the story to you. You can continue it, or you can end it as you see fit. And that's the story of Trouble.
I think in general, because I come from a musical family, and for me, musicality and words are very connected in my writing as well as my telling. So I'm going to start with a song, if that's all right.
Fine.
And this is a song which, Kate will appreciate it about me. And I'm just going to go right into it. My analyst told me that I was right out of my head, the way he described it. He said I'd be better dead than alive. I didn't listen to his jive. I knew all along that he was all wrong, and I knew that he thought I was crazy, but I'm not. Oh, no. My analyst told me that I was right out of my head. He said I need treatment, but I'm not that easily led. He said I was the type that was most inclined, when out of his sight, to be out of my mind. And he thought I was nuts. No more ifs or ands or buts. 2, 3, 4. They say as a child I appeared a little bit wild with all my crazy ideas, but I knew what was happening. I knew I was a genius. What's so strange when you know that you're a wizard at 3? I knew that this was meant to be. Oh yeah. Now I heard little children were supposed to sleep tight. That's why I got into the vodka one night. My parents got frantic, didn't know what to do. But I saw some crazy scenes before I came to. Now, do you think I was crazy? I may have been only 3, but I was swinging. They thought that angry young men, they thought that Edison and also at Einstein. So why should I feel sorry if they just didn't understand idiomatic logic that went on in my head? I had a brain, it was insane. Oh, they used to laugh at me when I refused to ride on all those double-decker buses, all because there was no driver on the top. 2, 3, 4. My analyst told me that I was right out of my head, but I said, dear doctor, I think that it's you instead, because I have got a thing that's unique and new to prove that I'll have the last laugh on you, 'cause instead of one head, I got 2. And you know 2 heads are better than 1. And I started with that because the story I'm going to tell you has, let's say heads are important as part of it. This is called, And So the Days Begin. So it begins that truly the words of those gone before have become instances and examples to those who followed, that folk might view what chances befell other folk in other days. And this is that story we all know, that story we all are told, that story we forget to remember. It travels here from a voice that would not be stilled once upon a time long, long ago, and for this we will soon be truly thankful. Therein it is related that in this tide of yore there was a king. Truly there have been many kings, and too many like this, who preferred his women to do without their heads. Yes, it's an old story, a little frayed around the edges, but I'm not dealing with edges at all. If you've heard it before, you're free to leave, since this is a free country. But if you know a king, if you are cohabiting with one, in or outside the bonds of matrimony, if you are a woman who values her head, I counsel you to heed these words, for this is that story which was, becoming that story which it will be if we remember not to forget. There was a king then, and he lived in a time that praised God on the tips of bright swords, and valued above all else the royal male tumescence, a time slipping fast away into forever, and for this let us be truly thankful. Now the king was a man who made good instance and example of both his bright sword and the royal mail tumescence, enjoying both in great enjoyment. He was, in truth, a man who loved to futter. He would verily futter day and night, night and day, day and night, a task made easier by one wife, his queen, and 25 concubines, all delightsome and delectable. He futtered then, both happily and verily, until there came a question of whom I deigned to futter whom, which is the bottom line in questions of futtering. This is to say that on a day of sorrows the king came upon the queen and 20 of his 25 concubines, stroking strong strokes upon men delightsome and delectable, none of whom were him. What roused his royal ire more, his concubines' concupiscence or their consorts' capabilities, remains a matter for speculation. But he was mad by all the ifrits of the land he was, and responded without stay or delay by hacking them all into little bits, stomping on the hacked up little bits, taking the stomped on hacked up little bits and throwing them into a fireplace, blocking the fireplace with an obese manservant and laying an eternal curse on all their souls. Bear with me. His royal indignation spent, and much blood left upon the palace floor, which only detergents not yet invented could ever remove, the king reflected on his act. And in so reflecting, he became a deep well of bitterness and rage that his harem caressed tumescence is large, but not his. But forsooth, deeper woe awaited him. For he was bereft now of both honor and of all available receptacles for the royal urges. He was, as it were, a well both deep and bitter, both high and dry. This would never do. So the king took himself to counsel with his lord high minister, and together they contrived a solution. They bethought themselves that heads, both maiden and otherwise, were disconcerting aspects in the female, and always best removed. Thus the king did swear a binding oath that he would marry, and whosoever he married, he would abate her maidenhead that night, and sever her neck the next morning, to make certain of his honor. And so it went. For 1,195 nights the king removed maidenheads and maidens' heads. That is 1,195 heads that could have laughed, or cried, or sang songs, or written books, or made other heads that would someday travel great seas to become rosy riveters and senators and shrinks, so that we will never know how many Hillary Clintons and Steinhams and Dr. Ruths thus were lost. And so it was, and so it went, until there was not left in the city a body fit for carnal copulation. But the Lord High Minister had kept 2 daughters, Dunyazad and Scheherazade by name, so far exempt from the king's rapacious eye, and for this he was truly thankful, for his daughters were young, comely, witty, and virgins to boot. But the eldest daughter, Scheherazade, had markedly different ideas. She read books, understood the wisdom of poets, priests, and kings, added to this the wisdom of women who recognized oppression when they saw it. God wot, Scheherazade did speak, God wot, this killing of women must stop. Dear father, I will marry this king, and thus become a ransom for my dear sisters' lives. Her father placed no faith in a woman's dubiously subjective emotional reaction. He did speak to his daughter of another daughter who talked too much, and was locked in a closet and beaten with live snakes, thus learning to keep her peace and the peace of her men intact. Scheherazade, seeing her father immune to the necessity of women, did counsel him with the inevitability of men. Have I mentioned that she was no fool? If thee would deny me this, dear father, I would tell the king that thee would deprive him of a wife, and this would inevitably cost thee thy own dear head. Her father lacked integrity, not wits. Thus he did consent that Scheherazade become the king's 1,196th wife. Now comes the good part. Scheherazade wed the king and gave up her maidenhead with no great sense of loss. Though she determined the royal tumescence wasn't all it was cracked up to be, still, and it was done in short space and little time, and then she begged a favor of the king. Dear king, before you kill me, I would beg thee to bring hence my sister Dunyazad, that I might finish a tale begun long ere this wedding night. The king, inclined to be grateful after the act, complied with great compliance, and for this let us be truly thankful. For Scheherazade was witty, wise with a wisdom beyond that of kings. She talked all night until the silver sun crept up into the sky to wish her well, and the king, weary with many words and much futtering, did sleep long ere her story's ending. Scheherazade rested, bathed, clothed herself in silk, and listened to the song within the wind. And when the stars cracked their lights across the velvet breast of night, she took up her story where she had left off, with only a brief interruption for futtering. And so it was, and so it went, for nights numbering 1,000 nights and a night, Scheherazade told stories, strung words like bright lights, to enchant the inner eye and instruct the wounded heart of this uneducated king. And every night she thought of another woman who still lived. And even as she taught us how to spin a tale and why, the king learned to hang low his own head, to repent of his futterings and his decapitational tendencies, his feckless demand for an honor he had not earned. He promised by the tip of his sword and the royal mail to Messens never to be so again. Now, as you well know, meaning as I am about to tell you, Scheherazade transcribed her words into writing for those who would follow, that we would remember not to forget. And this is that story which was of a king who did wrong and learned better. This is that story which it has become, of a woman who lived not in silence, of a woman who lived and determined her sisters should do likewise. And who can tell how many Clintons and Steinhams and Dr. Ruths thus exist, because when the king decreed that all around should lose their heads, Scheherazade kept hers. And for this let us be truly thankful.
This story is called The Horse Doctor. And I had to take out my note. I took it from a book called Storytelling for Young Adults that someone had sent me, a friend, one of my colleagues. And I love this story. I love horses too. There was once an old woman who lived in a little cottage all by herself out in the country. She had a small kitchen garden, a few hens, a cow, and an old horse. Oh, but how she loved that horse. She would sing to the horse. She would talk to the horse. She would put her arm around the horse's neck, put her face up next to him, and tell him all her troubles. And even though he couldn't reply, she was sure he understood, and she found comfort in telling him her secrets. Well, it just so happened that one day she noticed that the horse had stopped eating, and he wasn't galloping around the pasture, and he spent the day with his head hung down. And she was so worried, she called the veterinarian, and he came to examine the horse. And when he was finished examining the horse, he said to the old woman, "I can find nothing wrong with the horse that I can help him with, but you know, this horse is very, very old." And he went on his way. Well, the horse continued to fail. And one day the woman remembered there was a new minister at church, and he had told the congregation that he would help anyone, anywhere, anytime, with any problem they had. So she went to the minister. Now, the minister was a very young man, and he said to the old woman, "I don't know an awful lot about animals, especially farm animals. I grew up in the city and all we ever had was a cat. But he saw how distraught the woman was, and he went to see the horse. He opened the horse's mouth and looked inside and went, Then he put his hand on the horse's forehead and went, He walked very slowly around the horse, touching it very gently on its flanks. And then he took the horse's face in his hands and he said, "You poor creature, you sure are sick. Well, if you live, you live. If you die, you die." And he went on his way. Well, it seemed like overnight. The horse was galloping around the pasture, eating again. The woman was delighted. Could the minister have performed a miracle, she wondered? Days went by, and word spread that the minister was very sick. He had an abscess in his throat that was growing bigger and bigger, and it was cutting off his breathing, and the doctors didn't seem to be able to do anything for him. So the old woman went to pay him a visit. She went into his study, and there he sat in a chair with a blanket around his shoulders and his mouth open and his tongue kind of hanging out. And the old woman looked at his mouth and she went, She felt his forehead and she said, She walked carefully around him, touching him very gently on the shoulders. She took the minister's face in her hands and she said, "You poor man, you sure are sick. Well, if you live, you live. If you die, you die." And the minister, remembering those were the exact words he had said to her horse, he burst out laughing. The abscess in his throat broke, and all the poison drained away. And in days to come, the minister was well. Well, the minister never claimed to be a veterinarian, and the woman never claimed to be a doctor, but they had helped each other, and they became the best of friends for many, many years to come. And that's the horse doctor.
It does match nicely with my whole series of Fear series books with Jaguar Adams, because it is the original story of breaking and entering, okay? And it's got a snap to it, too. This is going to be so weird. Okay. Cameraman's going nuts. It's in front of her face. No, it's supposed to be in front of my face. Don't worry, I got it under control. Once upon a time in a nursery rhyme, there were 3 bears. I said 3 bears. They made morning porridge, took it out of the pot, but had to take a walk 'cause the food was too hot. They all went a-walking in the woods talking. Along came a little girl with long, shiny golden hair. Her name was Goldilocks. Her name was Goldilocks. She knocked on the door, but no one was there. No one was there. She walked right in and had herself a ball, sleeping and a-eating and rocking and all. Tasted Papa Bear's porridge, but it was too hot. And cold as an iceberg was Mama Bear's pot. But the little one was just right, and she ate down every last bite. Tried Papa Bear's chair, and it was too tall. Tried Mama Bear's, and it was too small. Believe this, girl doll? But the little one was just right, and her baby bump broke through and stuck there tight. Tried Papa Bear's bed, and it was too hard. Tried Mama Bear's was too soft, so she played her last card. And the little one was
just right.
Ba 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 ba, long came the three bears, tired from the woods, ready to sit down and eat some home-cooked goods. Yeah. Hey, said the papa bear, somebody's been eating my porridge. Hey, said the mama bear, somebody's been eating my porridge. Do you think we have ants? Hey, Mama She-Bear. Hey, Mama She-Bear, said the little wee bear. Somebody ate my porridge all up. There. Hey, said the papa bear. Somebody's been sitting in my chair. Maybe it's poltergeist. Hey, said the mama bear. Somebody's been sitting in my chair. Hey, Mama She-Bear, said the little wee bear. Somebody broke my chair. There. So they went upstairs to see if there was more, found messed up sheets and pillowcases all over the floor. Hey, said the papa bear, somebody's been sleeping in my bed. Did you forget to make it, dear? Hey, said the mama bear, somebody's been sleeping in my bed. And you have paws, you can do your own chores. Hey, Mama She-Bear, said the little wee bear. Somebody's still in my bed. There. Goldilocks woke up and boogied on out of there. Bye-bye-bye-bye, said the papa bear. Don't forget to write for prison. Bye-bye-bye-bye, said the mama bear. Next time, wait till you're invited. Hey, Mama She-Bear, said the little wee bear. What kind of bear was that there? Huh? And that is the story of the three bears. I said the three bears. I said the three. I said the three. I said the three bears. The end.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, but I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.